help you?
Yes. I'm doing some research, and the card catalog referred me to the Human Relations Area Files, AA1 for Korea.
Oh, the HRAF files are right over here. I gather you haven't used the files before.
No, I haven't.
Well, it's really not hard at all once you get the hang of it. It only takes a few minutes. First, we have the outline of world cultures. Now, this identifies every society in the world, even historic and prehistoric societies. And these are the cultural units in here on which each file is based.
The Human Relations Area Files have been variously described as an ethnographic encyclopedia and as an ever-expanding social science laboratory without walls. The real laboratory is the world and its cultures. The files constitute a sample of these cultures. They're relevant in many different ways to students and scientists representing a wide variety of disciplines dealing with man, his behavior, and his environment. The data in the files are available in either the original paper format or a microfilm version called the HRAF microfiles. The researcher may use the files in teaching, training and research techniques, studies of specific areas and cultures, and cross-cultural and comparative research.
I'm preparing a paper relating the ecology and economy of various peoples to their dwelling types.
Oh, well, you may want material on more than one cultural unit.
Yes, about a half dozen in all.
Well, in that case, you want to keep working with the outline of world cultures and make sure that there are file materials available on all your various cultures.
Okay, they're all here. And I've recorded their outline of world culture codes.
Oh, well, good. Well, now that you've made sure that there has been material processed on all the societies you're interested in, it's time you started working with the outline of cultural materials.
The outline of cultural materials is the standard topical index to all the sources in all the files. It contains the subject classification system on which the files are based, including the complete list of categories that are used in coding material and definitions of these categories. The area files are structured for both aerial and cross-cultural research, and their potential is almost limitless. Generally speaking, the researcher should first work with the outline of world cultures to obtain the OWC code of the culture he wishes to study. Then he should consult the list of HRAF files available or the HRAF source bibliography to ascertain that materials have been processed for the culture in question. Following that, he should check the outline of cultural materials for categories relevant to his problem. And lastly, he should scan the Human Relations Area Files Research Guide for the most effective techniques in using the files. This is the usual sequence in which these HRAF publications are consulted, but this is flexible, depending upon the interests, needs, and experience of the researcher. Broadly stated, the function of the Human Relations Area Files is to contribute to an understanding of man and the cultures he has produced. Specifically, HRAF seeks to promote research on man and his ways of life by organizing and making widely available primary source materials, and by facilitating comparative and interdisciplinary research on human behavior, social life, and culture. The history of HRAF starts at Yale University in the late 19th century with the great sociologist Dr. William Graham Sumner, who said, "Enduring generalizations about human behavior will emerge from a fund of knowledge about the ways in which the different peoples of the world live." Professor Sumner backed up this belief by organizing one of the first classified funds of such knowledge for his personal use. The next step came in the late 1930s at Yale's Institute of Human Relations with the encouragement of the Institute's director, Mark A. May.
The Human Relations Area Files were started in this building in 1936. The idea was originated by Professor George Murdoch, who at that time was a member of the research staff of the Institute. I bought the idea and continued to support it up until the beginning of World War II. It was one of the best investments that I ever made with Institute of Human Relations money.
The files expanded and developed under the direction of Professor Murdoch.
Mark's gamble back in 1936 has certainly paid off. Our first step was the preparation of the outline of cultural materials, the basis of our classification of our materials. With a very small staff, the Cross-Cultural Survey assembled quantities of information by the beginning of the war, and during the war, the Naval Unit added substantially to this.
The Human Relations Area Files, as it exists today, was established in 1949 under the leadership of Dr. Cleland S. Ford.
Yes, and it was that wartime experience that convinced me how important inter-university cooperation was. But it was not an easy idea to sell. It took from 1945 to 1949 before I could get 5 universities to agree to join in such an organization. And without the Carnegie Corporation's help, this would never have been possible.
Executive Director Dr. Frank Moore comments on the organization's current role and potentials.
During the past 2 decades, the HRAF files have proven of immense value to researchers in many fields, both for research and for training purposes in the behavioral sciences. HRAF expects to continue to expand and improve the files in their existing formats. We feel that HRAF's principal strength is in the fact that many major universities have voluntarily agreed to cooperate to advance the study of man, his problems, and his society.
Since all cultures cannot on a practical basis be included in the HRAF files, the decision as to which to give serious consideration is complex indeed. The files try to provide a culturally and geographically balanced sample of the world's cultures, concentrating on those that are better described so that the data can be more complete. Simultaneously, HRAF carefully weighs the overall interests of the member institutions in building an adequate sample of the world's cultures for comparative research. Once an ethnic or political unit has been chosen for inclusion in the files, HRAF assembles as extensive a bibliography as possible. Every source is analyzed, with area specialists often being consulted for their opinions on available literature. The foreign language sources are sent to experienced translators. Then the translations are edited at HRAF, first for accuracy with regard to the original text, and second for intelligibility in the English language version. Now, HRAF analysts read the material and, using the codes defined in the outline of cultural materials, place the appropriate category numbers in the margin beside the pertinent passages. Each source is analyzed and coded independently by 2 analysts to ensure accuracy and uniformity throughout. Every page of a source is analyzed. Each page of text, which may have 1 or more category numbers, is then printed in sufficient number to allow a duplicate page to be filed in each of the categories concerned. The complete original text in English or the foreign language is also reproduced for inclusion in page order in the file. The printed 5x8 slips are cross-filed and collated into sets. These are then sent to HRAF's 24 sponsoring institutions. To date, more than 3 million such pages have been shipped to each. In addition, the HRAF microfiles are located in colleges or universities throughout the world. The 5x8 pages are reproduced photographically with 1 or more of them included on each 3x5 microfilm card, grouped by subject matter. Each file in HRAF microfiles is an exact photographic duplicate of materials from the respective parent paper file. Approximately half of the 3 million paper slips have been converted to microfilm, with the process continuing at the rate of about 100,000 annually. Associate members receive the new microfilm cards in annual increments. To familiarize students with the recommended technique for utilizing HRAF most effectively, a number of instructors, particularly in anthropology and the other social sciences, are orienting their classes to this data resource.
You should remember when phrasing a problem for research in the files to keep three things in mind. First of all, state your problem precisely. Secondly, your search, your particular problem, should be aimed at obtaining data from the files, not theory. You contribute the theory. And three, the problem should be phrased in terms compatible with the categories in the outline of cultural materials. You have to translate your concepts or terms into those of the classification system that you are using. Now, do you have any questions concerning the file systems?
Yes. Isn't it misleading and possibly even dangerous to take data out of context?
It certainly is. That's one of the main reasons why the files provide the complete context. You will find a complete page order text of every source process for the files in category 116 of each file.
How current are the data in the files?
You'll find that the files are not designed as a current events reporting service. In addition to the problem of keeping up with the enormous flow of new data, there's an inevitable processing lag of, perhaps about a year between publication of a source and its appearance in the files. But more importantly, for the kind of research for which the files are especially designed, very recent information is not particularly significant, usually.
Well, what about applications? What kind of needs can these files answer?
Quite a range. Actually, any person interested in the study of human behavior or of social life or customs of people can find relevant information in the files. You can look at a particular society or study a world area or do cross-cultural comparative research.
These organized, quick retrieval files of cultural data are adapted to a growing number of disciplinary and interdisciplinary needs. For example, they are often consulted by social scientists, particularly those specializing in an area.
One of the projects I've been working on over the past few years has been the compilation of ethnographic handbooks of mainland and insular Southeast Asia. And in this kind of work, I find the files of particular value with respect to the many translations and unpublished field notes that one finds in the files. Some of the translations, for example, are from languages such as Chinese or Dutch. I think the files are also helpful in locating bits and pieces of data that otherwise would be buried in the library in books that are hard to find or take much time to locate. For example, population information.
RAF can be utilized by the child psychologist who might be researching mother-child relationships in different cultures to determine cross-culturally the effect on child behavior of the varying emotional and physical tones of those relationships. Similarly, the political scientist may be gathering information on political rallies in non-literate and semi-literate cultures and relating crowd behavior to the mores witnessed at typical American political conventions. The preparation of teaching materials, the training of students in research techniques, the study of specific world regions by area researchers, the cross-cultural analysis of selected topics, problems, or hypotheses. This is the story of the Human Relations Area Files, a nonprofit research organization dedicated to contributing to an understanding of man and the cultures he has produced. This contribution is continually expanding, and significant new potentials are opening through the development and application of computerized data processing systems, as exemplified by the HRAF Automated Bibliographic System. With the Human Relations Area Files, Sumner's vision of a worldwide fund of knowledge is now a practical possibility.